This is Ether Dynamics, here to talk today about artificial intelligence, specifically in Skyrim, the Elder Scrolls V. Throughout this presentation, we're going to jump back and forth between Skyrim and several other games, and talk about the general landscape of artificial intelligence. Now, before we get into the meat of this presentation, I want to give a big shout out to the other contributors for this video. These are folks who have shared some of their incredible clips from other video games, including some of the most brutal and punishing titles out there. You can find links to their channels below to see more of their amazing work. And now, on with the show. For those of you familiar with the Creation Kit, you know that it's a great tool to allow you to set up new scenarios, test out combat, and otherwise have fun with a fantastic engine. This is a preview render of an incredibly simple dungeon, and it's just a little combat scenario tester, so it's only meant to give players the most rudimentary challenge against a set of opponents. There's a basic cover for both players and for NPCs, and we can see there's a collection of 5 in here. The 3 green are leveled actors, but they're easy. They're all wizards. And the 2 yellow actors in there are forsworn ranged fighters. They're counterbalanced to the weakness of the wizards. They have a little more hit points, but the overall goal of the map is to give the player a challenge to hunt down ranged fighters that can seek cover at a variety of locations. So let's see how this plays out.
Is someone there?
Is someone there? Was that?
I knew it.
Well, we can see right away that despite being the stronger of the 2 parties here, the Forsworn are not able to stand up to the player. Any type of melee engagement ends very badly for them. Secondly, due to the low level of the mages, the player can basically walk around with impunity, only taking cover occasionally to heal up, but with ample supply of magic left over after the heal, and can easily just track down each mage and take him out with a single hit. In fact, we can see the power imbalance is so great here the player can purposely put him or herself in the worst possible situation, going 3 against 1 against the mages, no cover, completely out in the open, and coming away with only marginal damage. So obviously in this case we found the difficulty bar is rather low. This means the players may get some enjoyment out of it, but it's definitely not the kind of experience where you want to go back and repeat it over and over again for the kind of variety or challenge that it presents. If we were to talk about this in terms of the experiences of an intelligent agent, whether that be a person or an artificial intelligence, then we need to talk about exploration versus exploitation. Now in this case, the exploration that we're talking about is trying to find new and creative ways to defeat the enemies that you're facing. So the upside of exploration is you can find a new or exciting or interesting way to overcome the given challenge. Now the downside is that while you're exploring for new ways to defeat your opponent, you're missing out on an opportunity to exploit a way you already know to defeat them, or you're getting pounded on in the meantime. Now conversely, exploitation is just using a method that you know to achieve what you want. The upside is you're using a tried and true technique, so the results are a little more predictable. But the downside is you might be missing out on a new and spectacular way of defeating your opponent. In addition, should an exploit ever fail, then the player's left in a very compromised position. If the exploit is circumstantial, then he or she might get a chance to use it again. However, if enemies shift their strategy to neutralize the exploit, or a new enemy is immune to that type of exploit, then the player needs to fall back into Plan B, Plan C, or desperately explore for some new options. So if we look at this configuration, we notice 2 things. 1, the whole purpose of exploration is to find new and exciting things. Unfortunately, there's no risk or challenge presented in the current fight, and any new discoveries that we make are all the same thing, 1-hit kills. Now when talking about exploitation, all of our options are the same. We don't know any special technique that is more or less effective. Everything kills with 1 hit. There's no variety in anything that we can choose from. Worse yet, there's no pressure for us to have to find new techniques because everything that we do results in success, no matter how sloppy or poorly executed. Well, since those last settings were so easy, we're going to switch things up and raise everyone to just medium. Again, this is a single incremental change in the difficulty of the setting of the wizards only. The Forsworn are going to remain on medium. Now right away we notice our mages hit a little harder, and even though we have this one corner here, it takes several hits to dispatch him. We can see the other 2 are waiting in the wings, but this Forsworn person comes up to fight, and then, suddenly, the penalty for going out in the open has gone from minor to instant death. This change is so abrupt that even after a closely fought melee kill, there's not enough time to open up the potion menu before we get nailed from above, and that's it. So the result of making the smallest incremental change possible to difficulty, from going from easy to medium for the wizards, has changed our landscape completely. Now, even peeking around a corner to see what's going on can result in death. Now, it's nice for the game to present us with a new challenge that forces us to change our behavior, but the way that it's enforced is so stark and so harsh, it can be immediately frustrating to the player. So let's start exploring some new options for tackling this problem. One obvious option is using the cover that we're given, and we can see here in combination with a greater ward, it actually works very well. In fact, it works so well, we can find a few choice spots where we can always bait the AI to come get us, and always finish them off with minimum danger to ourselves. These cover spots are so effective, they become new exploits for us to use against the AI. And given the extremely narrow set of responses that are available to the artificial intelligence, we can see the outcome is the same every time. In addition, the player can learn where the AI tends to go to hide for cover, and anticipate their reactions with predictable results. Once one or two mages have been eliminated, the player doesn't have to show any kind of self-restraint, and knowing where the AI is going to hide, the player can just hunt them down like a dog. Another option is distraction. By summoning a creature that's not vulnerable to the mage's specific powers, the player is given free reign to finish them off however he or she wants. In this case, the mages ignore the player completely until it's too late. The AI is so vulnerable to this distraction tactic, it even draws mages away from cover. This preoccupation with the summoned creature is so complete that even when I accidentally kill it in this test, the mages are weakened enough where I can just finish them out in the open with no major threat to myself. And here we come up against one of the most fundamental challenges to modern gaming. We found a moment ago that experimenting in this new environment was extremely hazardous. In fact, it led to instant death most of the time. However, the moment we find one exploit, either cover or summoning a distraction, the challenge becomes trivial again. And this is one of the forces that fundamentally destroys the enjoyment of a game. It's the vicious punishment experienced by the player whenever they try to do something new or different or creative. Sadly, the engineers put so much time and energy into making these beautiful sandbox worlds, and yet the punishment for actually playing the sandbox is severe. Similarly, the rewards for finding an exploit are astronomical. In fact, many times, it's the only way to get past that certain point in the game. In situations like this, the game becomes a harsh disciplinarian, saying, I don't care what you think, I don't care how creative you are, I don't care what you're doing, shut up and do what I want you to do, or I will punish you and make you do it my way over and over and over. It effectively tells the player that your brain is worthless aside from the ability to recognize the pattern that I want you to recognize and to execute it in the way that I want you to execute it. It makes the player into an automaton who just moves their fingers and thumbs in the way that they're supposed to move on to the next challenge to make them move their fingers and thumbs in the way they're supposed to. Now, to keep modern games from becoming instantaneously one-dimensional, most designers put in several patterns for an opponent, so there's a little more stimulation than the old-school Nintendo games. However, we can still see instances where a player goes up against an opponent, and if they make 2, maybe 3 mistakes, that's it, and it's time to repeat the last 5, 10, or even 15 minutes of hard work. Now, sometimes the players can volunteer for that challenge by purposely choosing something on the highest difficulty, but when it's the mainstay of the game, it can be really frustrating. When faced with that kind of pressure, the game doesn't suddenly become fun when you find an attack that can kill just about everything with one hit. On the other hand, players don't like to be told that they can't advance until they power up by killing the same type of monster over and over again. In both these cases, the rewards for using an exploit and the punishment for exploration are greatly magnified. This can quickly turn gaming from a joy to a boring, repetitive, grinding chore. Now, if you think about the player's experience of the game, their best moments are usually exploration. It's discovering new areas, crafting new objects or tools from your own imagination, and then using that equipment and their wits against a new challenge in a creative way. So, when the player finds something that works, it's a very genuine and personal achievement. The bottom line is players want to get out there. They want to see that magnificent world that's been created for them. They want to experiment with new ideas and see what works and what doesn't. But most of all, they want the freedom to experience these new challenges and explore how to overcome them their way. So the question becomes, how do you make a game that encourages players to explore in a variety of different ways, but still gives them meaningful feedback on which options are best and which ones aren't? So to smooth out this difficulty curve, we need a few things. First, we need our opponents to be receptive and vulnerable to multiple different options that are presented to the player. This means more than being vulnerable to just one or two different types of weapons. It means being vulnerable to multiple types of strategic behavior on the player's part. This can include being brazen or looking for cover, or using other indirect or environmental factors to their advantage. Secondly, the cost of exploration should be very mild. The system should encourage the player to go out and try a variety of new things and not have to worry about dying an instant later. By the same token, exploitation has to be tightly controlled, so no one exploit guarantees an instant win over the opponent. Similarly, you don't want opponents to fall for the same trick every time, so the system has to have some kind of rotation where its vulnerability to certain exploits shifts as a function of time or a function of player behavior. So, going back to Skyrim, what might that system look like? Here we are back at our trusty map, in a favorite location for me to ambush the AI, but you'll notice now that they summon minions to chase me out or weaken me before they consider making a charge. In fact, the AI in this area has been specifically taught that there are areas that have led to their death in the past, and they know to avoid those specific situations based on my location versus their location. That means the AI will gladly use that corner so long as I'm not up there. But, knowing that it was a favorite kill spot for me in the past, they're going to use minions to apply pressure before they consider risking their own skins. Secondly, you'll notice that the AI is continually building a greater and greater set of lightning walls in the staircase. This is because they've taken up a defensive position below. They have ample cover, but they want to make it as difficult as possible for me to close the gap between my hiding space and their hiding space. These particular walls are a little more dangerous because they have an additional slowing effect that'll trap me out in the open. Now, this does not mean the mages have become a passive type of opponent, which only lays traps and hides in the back, so I have to go seek them out. Instead, the relative bravery of each AI opponent is based on a lot of circumstantial factors. These include the presence of a summoned minion, how many lightning walls are in the area, and a bit of randomness to keep me on my toes. Now I can see by the complete saturation of lightning walls in that area that staying in that hiding hole was not a good idea. In other words, they've managed to mitigate that exploit, but not do it by killing me outright. You'll also notice that since I've abandoned my hiding spot, the wizards are taking up new ones of their own. You can see that just by luck here, I catch a wizard as he's setting up his defenses, and I'm able to pull off the kill right before his summon comes into play. Now, ironically, we've switched spots, and the wizards are more than happy to start making fortifications upstairs and sending minions to flush me out from behind these lower rocks. Now, while I'm distracted here, you'll notice that a wizard will actually come down out of cover from the top of the screen and try to wall me in down below. This is a very bold move that reduces the strategic value of that cover, since I would be slowed and injured if I stayed there. It also makes it much harder for me to assault her new hiding location. And though I still get the kill, I'm forced to heal immediately after. Now that I'm cornered again, though, and behind a significant amount of lightning walls, the wizards are moving in and sending more minions. Now the interesting thing here is while I'm distracted handling a minion, a wizard actually makes a full-on charge to try to take me out on the staircase. To his credit, the walls are perfectly positioned to cover his retreat, so I dare not follow him out in the open. Sensing he has advantage, our friend comes back, summoning another minion, but he gets a little too close and I'm able to take him out, though he gets in a good hit. Now that still draws me out of cover long enough for his friends to take a few potshots at me. Now I can see another wizard getting ready to flank on the catwalk, so I'm going to leave that spot and seek cover elsewhere. Now what happens if I want to go all out and not worry about cover so much? Will I die instantly? Well, let's find out. Well, I survived the charge. The wizard and I both get hurt, but there's no instant death. Instead, it actually turns into a very exciting combat. His use of lightning walls not only slows me down for changing positions, but also prevents me from landing a few hits. As he retreats, he forces me out in the open where his friends can nail me. He quickly summons a minion to distract me, and all the while he's blocking me with that lightning wall, making me less inclined to pursue him. On the left side of the screen, you can see the wizard planning new traps to prevent me from following him into his new spot, while his minion harasses me. Now, I decide to go over the top, but it still leaves me exposed. Now, despite an overwhelming display of stubbornness on my part, I successfully run the gauntlet and kill off my nemesis. Notice, though, it was an engaging encounter on both sides, and neither one of us faced instant death for making a mistake, though the unmodified Forsworn aren't so lucky. Now that we've fully explored cover, let's see what happens when we summon something. You can see that I already have a Storm Atronach on the left that's irritating this wizard. But unlike before, she doesn't give up her strategic position. Instead, I just happen to catch her as she's setting up her lightning walls. However, it does preoccupy the other creatures of the wizard zone, giving me a marginal but not overwhelming advantage. So, while I'm dispatching one wizard who's out of magic on the stairs, the other is down below peppering the area with lightning walls, making a completely unbearable hellscape. So, with these new strategic AI behaviors, we've seen gains in both areas. For exploration, there's no longer the threat of instant death, and there's a wider variety of behaviors that our opponents exhibit, so there's a wider variety of challenges for the player to explore and enjoy. As for exploitation, there's no silver bullet that gives the player absolute advantage over his or her opponents. In a similar vein, the semi-randomized actions of the AI prevent the player from finding one solution that he or she can repeat over and over and over again. Though an occasional axe to the head is still pretty satisfying. Now if you'd like to give this dungeon a spin, there's a link below. And be sure to check back here regularly for updates on this map and other new creations. Lastly, and most importantly, I would love to hear back from you. Please feel free to share your reflections and observations about artificial intelligence in this instance and any other game. This has been a presentation by Ether Dynamics. Thank you for watching.